Okay, so back on the frame jig today. So basically the first thing I did was I put in this T-bar here to pick up the 2 points for the bat wing on the C4 rear end. And then I kind of made it modular up to the torque arm mounts and picked up the bolt holes for the trailing arms as well. So now I've got a pretty decent little setup here, although I see that moved when I welded it. That kind of sucks. I'll have to straighten that out. But I've got a decent setup right now that I can now jig any C4 rear end, a Dana 36 or Dana 44. And now when I build the next one of these frames, I can just slap it in here and pick up all these points and everything is good. So, it pays to be consistent, but I've also got it set up so I can move this. So if I want to do like a C4 suspension for a first gen F body, Firebird or Camaro, I can, move this in reference to the front end or vice versa, and basically I have everything there. So you can see I made like these brackets that pick up these points, these brackets that pick up these points, and of course this bar here that picks up these points. Those are the key alignment areas for this rear end. I didn't worry about the shocks too much. I feel like those are very easily located, and I didn't want to get too constraining either. So that's good. Now I've got to come up here and pick up these points for the front section and make this all mountable easily. So first thing I'm going to do is I've got to smooth out some welds in the back side of these plates. I'll just hit that with a sander real quick. Then I've got my parts cut. I've just got to make sure all my holes are the right diameter in those plates, and I'll bolt the plates on and then start building the jig up. And I'll take you through how I'm doing this. It's pretty straightforward, but again, I like to have all my key points laid out and marked up. And after that, this frame is ready to come off the jig. So there we go, end of story. Let's keep going and I'll show you what I'm into. All right, so I bolted up the plates. These are the plates that I'm going to weld to my jig, but I've just bolted them in here. I did put one washer in between just to give myself a little bit of slack. And I also have the plates that support the bottom loosely bolted in, as you can see there and here. And that's going to pick up the vertical. So next thing I do is I got to cut my vertical posts and then my horizontal brace. So I'll show you what I'm into there. All right, so I've taken my vertical, slipped it in place, put tabs on both sides, and I'll drill and tap those into the main frame later. And then for my horizontal supports, I welded those on. So now the bottom of the clip is held up, and of course I did put one washer under there too, just to give myself a little working slop. And I'll actually write that on the jig, one washer on each point. And that way if I need to add shims or things like that later, I can. But again, it just gives me a really nice starting point to get everything hooked into the clip. All right, so next step, and verified that I can take this apart. The frame will lift up off it just like the rear. There's really nothing constraining it in the upper position. So my next step is going to be the cross piece, the horizontal piece that goes between the sides now, and it's going to tie to these plates. So it'll go from here across these and onto that. That's the deal. Okay, that's all I needed. One piece of 1x2. Ties those plates together beautifully. These plates are parallel. I thought they were off by just a little bit, but they're not. They're very, very parallel to each other, which makes it very handy. So now I'm going to weld that up and move on to the next step. Okay, so that's looking good. that's pretty much wrapped up there. Now all I got to do is drill the holes and tap for the 5/16 bolts that hold all this stuff to the frame. Then I want to label the individual pieces, because if there's any tolerancing in the welding and stuff like that, it's going to make it a little tough to figure out when you're putting it all back together. So that's the next step. I'm going to clean all this stuff off the frame, roll it up on its side so I can get to the stuff easily, and start drilling and tapping, I guess. That's going to finish up the jig, I think, and then it's going to be a point where I've got to now make the move to lift the frame off the jig and put it directly on the rotisserie, which we'll do after this. But let's get all the stuff bolted down so that there's no, we can reproduce this position every time, and this will work out good. Very excited about this. All right, so I went down through and drilled and tapped these holes 5/16 18. Then I went back through and labeled each one where it goes, what part was there. For this case, the 55 Chevy truck, left front cross, and just went down through the line and did that with all my supports. I got one in the front I can't do yet because the rotisserie's in the way. I got to slide that out a little bit. The horn comes in too far, so I can't tap those. I was able to drill them, however. So, all right, next step, I'm going to flip this over and do the other side. And rinse and repeat. It didn't take too long. I was using this rig. Now, I don't know, mixed reviews. So this is made for an impact driver. It's a drill tap combo. I was drilling it out to like a 1/4 inch first, and then that just cleaned up the hole and did the tap, and I managed to break the first one already halfway through this side. So I've got regular taps to do the other side if I break the next one, but I only had 2. So those work really slick and really fast if you're very careful with them. Keep the thread cutter lubricant on them, and stop. Don't just horse it through. Go ahead, back up. Go ahead, back up. A couple times, and then it'll blow right through. So don't crowd them. Give it some time. Let it cut at its pace. But I don't know, it just seems violent in that impact, and that's what they're made for. They're made for impact. So anyway, I'm going to continue on to the other side now. And then I've got to, after that, I got to weld up the mounts to connect the frame directly to the rotisserie and get the jig out. So that's the plan. Here we go. Okay. So I have removed the frame jig. I'm down to the bare frame now. I made some brackets here that just bolt to the bumper mounts for the rotisserie, so I can still use that. You can see I've got the rear one here, and those are working great. So I've taken the car and I flipped it upside down. I'm going around now just kind of like I got one weld that I couldn't get right here with the jig on it, so I've got to get that. But also what I'm doing is there's some holes in the bottom of the frame that I want to take care of. So I got these things from Speedway Motors. Rather than just sitting there trying to fill each hole, you got these little plug sets, and they got these barbs on them, and they work really good. You just set them in the hole and then tap them in with a hammer, and then they're ready to TIG, and they got a nice gap. Nice piece. So I've done all of the holes on the bottom. I just don't like leaving things open. I've got this open area right here I'm going to have to figure out what to do with. This is where the radiator bracket mounts, but I'll figure that out later. I might make a cap for it or something that seals it off with some seam sealer or something like that. But right now I'm just going to grab the TIG, weld in all these holes. Then I got to flip it over. I got a couple more I got to do. And then the next step is just sitting there. I got to go through and dress all of these welds with a wire brush, clean them all up, make sure there's nothing that needs any attention before this goes to paint, which is getting pretty close. But actually, then I've got to put the K-member in it and double check a few things with that, get the motor mount lined up. Those are all coming episodes. But for right now, I'm just going to take the little bit of time, clean up some stuff, and just TIG these little plugs in. You can see I've got a few of them here. I just don't want to leave these open. So that's my plan, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, I've filled in those little plugs. Everything looks good here on the bottom. So I'm probably gonna wrap this video up here today. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm gonna start cleaning welds and sanding and, you know, inspecting everything, see what it looks like. Get in there with the wire wheel, get everything, just, you know, try to get everything cleaned up the best I can. Get a lot of this, you know, this heat marks out. This. And we'll have a better idea where we're at. So, yeah, that's it for the frame jig. I've got that all put away now. I can put that back together rapidly anytime I need it. So that's going to be a handy tool to have. So anyway, one thing I've got to do yet is I'm waiting for the parts for the front sway bar mount. And I want to, once I locate that, I want to drill some holes through here and sleeve them with tubing so that they can't crush the pipe when you tighten those up. I like to do that whenever I'm putting a bolt through a piece of tubing. Just gives me a better, you know, a more crush resistant tube. And I will do that once I figure out where they gotta go. So, yeah, so far this project has been quite good. So I'm gonna keep moving and bring you along. I'll let you know where we get into next week.